Hey everybody, and welcome to another cooking class with Evie. Today we are going to be making mango and chickpea kale salad. This is a wonderful, um, real nice salad that's good enough to eat as a meal. It contains protein and fiber, which is going to be very satisfying. It's going to stay with you for a long time. But in addition to having the protein and fiber, the good thing about this is it has naturally sweet ingredients. The mango is one. There's another ingredient, pomegranate. Both of these of which are not very easy initially to peel or to section or to cut up. But I'm going to make that easier for you today because we're going to go through with that. And I'll show you how to do it, both of those, very easily. So again, this is a great dish. It can be a full meal. You could add some chicken to it if you want to add a little animal protein to it. But because of the quinoa, it's a complete protein, so it's a complete meal in it as it is. And because it is so hearty, it is one of the foods that are an excellent dish if you're trying to avoid sugar cravings and minimize the amount of added sugars that you're adding into your diet. As I said, it's naturally sweet, so you get that sweetness, and you'll stay full, so you won't find yourself looking for a sweet snack that soon thereafter having it. 2 good tips for trying to avoid sugary foods. And if you're interested in learning a little bit more about that and getting some more tips, you're in luck because Mary Ellen, my colleague, and I are hosting another free 10-day sugar cleanse starting September 8th. And all you need to do is just IM me, let me know you want to join. I will add you to the group, and I will also send you an invite to the private Facebook group that we have for this. So, hope you can join us September 8th and learn a little bit more about sugar and how it reacts in our bodies. Before I get started, if you're out there and you want to just say hello to me in the comment box, it's great for me to know that you're there. So leave me a little comment and feel free to ask any questions that you might have as I'm going through the recipe. So let's get started, right? Before we do though, I'm going to start out with quinoa, which might be something you're not familiar with either, although it is becoming a more popular. It's actually not a grain, it's a pseudo grain. But so a couple of things that maybe you might not have on hand, and maybe you want to make this salad. Well, I had mentioned the mangoes. Mangoes, big right now, right? They're delicious, they're sweet. But if you don't have them, peaches are also in season. So peaches would be a great substitute for the mangoes. So feel free to kind of experiment a little bit with these fruits. Again, too, with the pomegranate. Pomegranates are great because they kind of have like a sweet tart flavor. You might be able to get a similar flavor with craisins, although I'm not a fan of craisins because they tend to have a lot of added sugars to them. If you do a dried cranberry, which is what a craisin is, then I would suggest that you find one that actually has one with fruit juices to sweeten it up. But instead of that, you might want to try raisins or even grapes. Grapes are great as a substitute here. Cherries are a good one. And I know Mary Ellen Zung, my colleague, coincidentally just made a fabulous mango salad yesterday in her cooking class, and she used cherries in hers. So cherries are good. I also was thinking of using blueberries. I was going to use blueberries because I got them for my CSA today. But I actually found a pomegranate in the store. I didn't think that they were quite in season, but maybe we're coming into that season now. So I was very happy to find that. So we're going to go with the pomegranate today, and I'll show you how to get those seeds out easily. So those are just some options in case you're thinking, well, I don't have those ingredients, but I want to make this recipe. So the first thing to start with, I mentioned quinoa. Quinoa is a semi-grain. Or pseudo grain. It comes in different colors. I actually had at home a red one, and I got some white. I thought it would be fun to mix the 2 colors together, just to give it a little bit more texture to the dish. You can just use plain white, that's fine too. they have a little bit of a different flavor. The red tends to be a little more nutty in flavor. The one thing they do have in common, though, is something called saponins that are on the surface of the grains. And those tend to make them taste very soapy if you don't clean them. So what I have here is just a little bit of water, and I'm going to add in a quarter cup of each of these grains because the recipe calls for a half cup of quinoa. And I'm just going to mix these around and basically just rinse off that soapy surface that they have. Another way to do this is just to add it to a colander and just pour water over it. And you'll see it actually bubbling up just like so. So I'm just cleaning my quinoa here. And what I'm going to do then is I'm going to add it to a cup. So you always want, it's like rice in that you add twice as much liquid as you do your grains. So I have a half cup here. Get all that out. And I'm going to add a cup of water to it. And then I'm just going to set that on a medium heat on my stove until it comes to a boil. At which point, I will turn it down and let it simmer for about 15 minutes. It doesn't take long. But like rice, you don't want to open the lid because you want it to steam. And what's going to happen is they're going to open up and they're going to make little curly tails. It's very cute. So while that is cooking, let's now take a look at our next ingredient, which is this pomegranate I was telling you about. So, delicious. I actually eat all of the seeds inside. There's a little pulp inside of each seed, but some people don't care for that. I've gotten used to it. Let's put it that way. So, how do you cut this easily? Well, the trick is in the way the fruit grows. And in order to see that, what I did was I just made a small incision through the skin all around the top. You can see it here. All right. And I'm just going to peel that back and take the top off. And I'm just noticing now, much to my disappointment, but there is a section of this that looks like it was bruised. I'm going to bring you guys up closer to me so you can see me a little bit better and see what I'm doing. All right. Yeah, unfortunately, there is like a little section here. Do not like that. How disappointing. But that does happen. Now, what you can see, though, is there are sections that this fruit is growing in. And what I want to do is I want to just take my knife and can you see I'm going right down here. I'm just going to score and cut through that skin in all of these sections. Usually there's about 6. We'll see how many we get today. I've seen 4 before. I'm going to avoid that section that doesn't look good. All right, and there you have it. So then what I want to do is, I have a bowl. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to peel back those sections and pull it apart. And look at that. What's going to happen then is you get all of those seeds and you can just kind of tease them off. But look how easy that is, just to get all of those out. Sometimes you might get a section that comes out on its own, but for the most part, they're very easily accessible. I remember having these as a kid. My mom would put these into, like a section of them into our lunch boxes. And as you can imagine, it was a little bit messy, but boy, was it worth the effort to have those sweet tart fruit seeds as a treat after lunch. back in the day when I couldn't buy a lunch at school, right? So what I want to do is I want about a half cup of these, which is going to be about half of this piece of fruit here. See, I have this whole section off, but it's going pretty quickly. You just got to kind of rub against them and they come right off. I'm going to take this one last section here, and I think we'll have about enough. I've got a few soft ones here I'm going to avoid. Very disappointing. It didn't look like, I usually look to see if there's any soft spots on the outside or anything that looks like it was dented or bruised. This one was hiding from me. Oh, well. Like anything else, got to go with the flow. All right, oh, can't help myself. Let's take a few more. All right, go. All right, good. And now I'm just going to add some water. Why? Because you will find that the seeds will sink to the bottom and the white pulpiness rises to the top, and it makes it very easy for me then to go in and clear out any pieces that might have escaped when I was taking those seeds out. There we go. All right, and then what I will do is just strain them out. I'm going to let those white pieces float off the top first. And now I have my pomegranate seeds. So what'd you think? Pretty easy to do. Yeah. And once you know how to do that, you don't mind getting one. And it's much cheaper to buy the whole fruit and do it yourself than to have them already de-seeded. And the problem with that is that a lot of times they have preservatives, citric acid added to them, just to keep them longer. So this way, there's nothing added to it, or they're not already starting to go bad. Unless, of course, you get a bad one like I just did. Okay, so we now have our pomegranate. Let's take a look at our mango. Again, another one of these fruits that people don't tend to know how to cut them. So what I'm going to do is, again, I'm going to, if you look at a pomegranate, a mango, you will notice that there is one angle of it that is narrower. This is longer. From front to back to me is, that's because the pit is flat. What we want to do is we want to cut so that we are going on either side of the flat side of the mango. So I'm going to put this down again so you can see it. And that's what I'm going to do. This is the shorter distance, so I'm going to turn it up on its side. And I am going to just start cutting along that one side. I'm going to turn it around. Hold on, I'm just going to turn my quinoa down. And I'm going to mentally make a timer of that. All right, and I'm going to do the same on the opposite side. Now, what I did was I didn't quite get around that pit. So I'm going to have to come in a little wider. There we go. All right. And then what we're left with is the two halves. Now, I used to peel the mango and try and get it off the pit. It is really hard to do. I have a girlfriend from Bermuda, and so this was when I was in my 30s already. I mean, I had no idea how to peel a mango. She showed me. She's like, it's easy if you know how. And she had been there, living there. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to put this down again so you can see it up close. I'm just going to take and just going to score along. Now be careful. If you have a short, sharp knife, you don't want to be cutting your hand. So let's do it this way. That's better technique. I'm going to make these small because I want smaller pieces in my salad. And you'll notice I didn't cut the skin at all because what I want to do is I want to turn it now 45 degrees and come through and make little squares in a grid, right? Okay, now what I can do is I just, kind of looks like a little porcupine. I always like to think of it that way. And then what is so easy to do now, I have my bowl here, is I'm just going to go at the base of each one of those little cubes and just scrape them right off. It helps to have a good knife to do this. So I wouldn't suggest a butter knife. A paring knife is perfect for it. And I'm just going to peel away all the flesh from the skin. All right. There you have 1/2 done. I am going to do the other mango as well. And like I said, if you don't have mango, peaches would be great. I mean, you can even see peaches have the same type of flesh, the same consistency. They may even be just as sweet. All right, we have our second half. And this is all just to prepare the ingredients so that they're ready when we want to assemble our salad. And once you know how to do this, it makes it so easy to have this cubed up. If you're looking again for a snack, a sweet snack, kind of curb those cravings. Why? Because whole fruit has fiber in it, which slows down how quickly sugar is absorbed because it does contain sugars. And here you have it. All right, so we now have our pomegranates. We have our mangoes. Aren't those great colors? I know, so exciting. Okay, so here comes another ingredient that is not necessarily the shining star of some dishes, right? Kale. Let's push you back here. Let's get set back again. There's many different kinds of kale. This is actually red kale. The name given because of the color of the stems. We're not going to use the stems today, but I will save them because I do tend to use them if I'm cooking up kale greens. I'll chop up the stems and add them in. I'm going to want to do, maybe not a whole bunch. There's 6 stems in here. Let's start out with 3 of the stems. And since I'm not going to use the stems, what I like to do is hold the stem side up and like I unzip it. All right, do it with that and like that. And that might be about 2. Let's see how much that is. And I might add another one in, another leaf in if I feel like we want some more. But what I want to do is I want to cut these small. So I tend to roll them up into a little roll. And then what I'm going to do is kind of chiffonade, which is just cut very small slices off of this roll. As I go, I'm constantly keeping the leaves in so I get as many of the leaves as possible without escaping. said, there's a lot of different kinds of kale. You could use lacinato kale for this, which is also known as dinosaur kale. It tends to be a little tougher, a little stronger in flavor, which is why I tend to like the curly green kales or the red kale. My favorite is actually Russian kale, red Russian kale, which I grow in my garden. And I just had harvested and cooked it, so I didn't have enough to do today. So I ended up getting this for my CSA. All right, so I'm just going to go cross-sized now, just to make the pieces a little bit smaller. Let me show you about the size that they are now. You know, they're good little bite size. Now, you may have heard me mention massaging kale. Why? To what end? Okay, well, sometimes, you know, when I speak to people, they're like, oh, I don't like kale. It is just so tough. And, you know, it is kind of hard to digest when it's that tough. I mean, people don't chew it well enough. So what I like to do is I will take a little bit of olive oil. So I'm just going to put in, it was about like 2 teaspoonfuls, not quite a tablespoon. And literally, I'm going to crush these leaves and wilt them. Now, if you'd like, you could add a little bit of salt right now. Crush that in with it as well. And that might help actually leach out some of the liquids in it. But this makes it almost as if the greens were blanched and more easily digested. There we go. All right, now, let me just clean my hands a little bit. You may have noticed that I had my greens in a cotton bag. I love to do this, where I put the greens, like here's the ones I didn't use. I think we've got enough there. So I'll put it back in the bag, and that helps keep them from having too much moisture. It absorbs some of the moisture, but keeps them moist. And then what I'll do is I will put a plastic bag around them. And this is the way I store them in the refrigerator. Sometimes I'll write on it so I know what it is. So I don't have to keep opening it up to find out what it is. But that basically is now our kale. And you can see it's a lot softer. Kind of like to think of it, you know, like almost pre-digesting it. You're breaking up some of those hard cellulose cells that they have. All right, so we now have our kale. We have a couple of our ingredients. Let's look at that dressing. So what we want to do for the dressing is we are going to add some more oil. I'm going to add 2 tablespoons of olive oil. You don't have to really measure this. You could just eyeball it. But basically what you want is you want equal portion of olive oil and that's not going to work, and balsamic vinegar. And I happen to have this aged balsamic vinegar that this is just the perfect time to use. Balsamic vinegar is nothing more than vinegar, like a regular wine vinegar, that has grape must added to it. Grape must is the sugar remains of the grapes. And if you have a real balsamic vinegar, that's allowed to age over years. The more years it's aged, the more expensive it is. Just like a fine wine. In fact, some balsamic vinegars are so good, they're served as a after-dinner aperitif. They're like sipping wines. Okay, so I have my balsamic, I have my olive oil. I am going to add maple syrup. So I'm going to add just a little bit of maple syrup. The recipe actually calls for 1 tablespoon. I tend to like to go a little lighter on that, so I'm going to add in about 2 teaspoons. You can always add more later on. But remember I was saying I wanted to keep the sweetness natural from the fruits because it has the fiber in it. So I don't want to be adding more sugars. than really is necessary for the dish. And I'm going to add in, I'm going to say about a half teaspoon of salt. If you want, if you'd like, you could add a little bit to the, I'm going to add a little bit to the kale as well. And I'm going to add a little bit of pepper as well. Oops, come back. You might have noticed that I used a mason jar to make my vinegar, to make my vinaigrette. Why? Because I love to cover it up like this and then just shake it up. This is great because it helps to emulsify it, helps to keep it mixed together without having to whisk it. Okay, so here we have our dressing all made up. All right, so we're almost ready to assemble everything. What I normally would do if I were using canned chickpeas, I would open up my can and rinse it really well. I want to get rid of those sugars, salt, or anything that might have been added in the processing of the peas. What's great about this is it's organic. It's also in a BPA-free can, so I'm not getting any of the chemicals that might be leaching from the plastic liner in the can into my food. So nothing wrong with doing that. If you're doing that for this recipe, one can, just about enough. Two cups is what I'm looking for. One can has about 1 3/4 cups. But I did have some dried chickpeas in my refrigerator. And last night, I let them soak and I cooked them this morning. And they're now, now cooled. And I am going to, I'm going to put it in here just in case someone try to escape. I'm going to add in 2 cups of these cooked chickpeas. I like to do it this way because then I can dictate how crunchy they are or how soft they are. Sometimes I find that the ones that come in the can might be a little bit too firm still. All right, so I'm going to add my 2 cups of chickpeas. All right. And I said, if you want to use your can, that's another quick way. And the other thing too is, if you don't have time and you see pomegranates that are already deseeded in a container, that's another quick way to make this dish. I would think too, if it was off season and you had canned peaches that were in natural juices, organic, those would work great in place of the mango. All good. All right, so let's add in our mango. We have our kale, our mango, our chickpeas. Let's add in those pomegranate seeds. And remember, we shook up our dressing. We can add that in. Just gonna pour that right in. Oh, that looks fabulous. All right. And then we can add in our quinoa. Now, the quinoa that I made should be done. It is. And I just want to show this to you. Because what you would normally do is you would take a fork and just fluff it. So that's your quinoa. Now, this is a little hot, a little warm. Now, you know what? If I hadn't massaged my kale and I wanted some of my kale to wilt, maybe I would add it just as it is. But I did make some up, again, yesterday, ahead of time. Always good to prep. And I have this. So this looks like more than a cup. Usually I say it doubles in size. This almost looks like a cup and a half. I'm going to add all of that in. Oh, that looks good. And I'm going to give it a toss. Oh, it's so pretty. All right. Now, we might almost be done. And in fact, this can be the conclusion of your dish. But what I like to do is add in a little bit of avocado, which is just some additional healthy fats, healthy fibers, antioxidants. By the way, if you notice, this salad has a lot of different colors in it. That means that there's a lot of antioxidants in it. Antioxidants are what help keep us young. They're considered anti-agers. They're what help our organs function properly and generally just keep our immune system stronger. So we want to be able to introduce color from plant foods whenever we can. And I just happened to have this avocado in the refrigerator, and I thought, you know what? This is going to be a good addition to this dish. And guess what? I cut it open exactly the same way that I did the mango, where I go across one way, and then I come across the other way, just to make little cubes out of it. And I'm going to grab my spoon that I've been using, my measuring spoon, and just scoop it out. Real easy. And I'm just going to use half avocado in this. I think that that's probably just fine. Excellent. All right. Going to give that a toss. And that'll add like just a different texture to it as well. And there you have it. We have this super duper, this is a complete meal with protein and fiber, antioxidants, vitamin, minerals, trace minerals, everything that you need for a complete meal. As I said, you could add chicken if you wanted some meat protein. You could add some tofu if you wanted to. I'm just going to plate it up a little bit here. Get an idea. A few of those pomegranates on top. Isn't that great? And there you have it. Isn't that great? All right, should I try it? Okay, I'm going to try it. Hold on. Oh my gosh. The pomegranate in it gives it that little bit of tartness, that little bit of zing, something that a stronger vinegar might give it. So it's nice. It's nice to have balsamic, which is a milder vinegar, along with those pomegranates. But I could see grapes would work, or raisins would work as well. Very satisfying. I'm going to give it a little bit more salt, just to punch up those flavors. The right amount of salt, doesn't taste salty. It just punches up the flavors and enhances what is there. If you make your own foods and you're not eating processed foods, chances are you're okay to add salt. But of course, talk to your doctor, especially if you're watching your salt intake. And there you have it. So, I hope you try this. I hope you join us September 8th for our free 10-day sugar cleanse, where you'll learn more tips on how to avoid sugar from your diet, how to avoid cravings, and how to improve your mood because of that, and improve your energy levels. Hope to see you soon. Please, I am me. Let me know if you make the recipe. If you want the written recipe, I am me as well, and I will send it out to you. Take care. Bye-bye now.